listening to the Philly Fans Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 6th episode of the Philly Fans Podcast. And everyone, like say, happy FTM week. Almost swept the Mets, we swept the Nationals, and we're owning the NL East currently. And special guest joining us on the podcast, Eddie Tamanini.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. It's good. I'm making my sports podcast debut. This is the best.
So, Eddie, you're a musician. Tell us a little about yourself. Throw in some plugs here.
Oh yeah. Well, I just put out a new record called Grieving Hour a couple weeks ago. So that's been that's been a big win there. Even though it was about very like sad events in my life. But yeah, I've been writing for years now. I was in a band called Nothing But a Nightmare for a long time. Now I do a solo project and I'm a teacher. And so music is obviously my day-to-day life, but talking about the Phils, that's like my favorite pastime. So it's good to be here. So thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, it's good.
Well, you heard a snippet of his song in the intro, so make sure you go check it out on Spotify and wherever you get your music. You can also check out the Philly Fans Podcast wherever you get your music, because
that's right.
probably a podcast there.
Oh, that's right.
We gotta plug us too.
A little bit of a plug there.
All right, so I want to start us off with saying win probability statistics are the most awful thing I've ever seen. I hate them so much on any ESPN broadcast where they pull up the win probability.
It's always the national TV that does that, right?
Yeah, it's ESPN.
I know sometimes T-Mac and Kruk do a little like, oh, FanDuel, powered by whatever. they do the whole like, oh, the Phils have this chance of winning tonight, but it's usually the prop bets and stuff or the sports bets and whatnot. Yeah, I think it's a bunch of nonsense. It's like the win probability for Phils is 80%. And when you look at our team now, it's like in the ninth inning, if we're down by 4 runs, like the probability doesn't matter. I look at our lineup and I'm like, that percentage doesn't mean anything because you don't know who's coming up in our lineup
I feel like
runs.
There's a difference between like John and Kruk and McCarthy saying like, hey, like this win props because they do it like maybe like once a game.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is I'm seeing this the entire game. Every at bat it changes and just a little bit. Like it's so far from true that like why should I do it? Why should I even look at it? Like it makes no sense. But I'll tell you why it's there. It's just fueled by gambling because someone's gonna look at that and go, man, I could put a bet on the Phillies right now.
I think
it's all fueled by that, man. Yeah.
I think this came up when the Phillies were playing the Mets the other day, and the Mets had like a 95% chance to win per like ESPN's chances or something like that. I think you do have to cut a little bit of slack because like you can't really calculate the Mets, but it's not really a great system at all. It's just unnecessary. I think is the core value of it. Just unnecessary.
I want to bring that up. How overrated the Mets were going into that series.
Dude,
they were trying to say that they were playoff contenders.
Outrageous.
That's every year with the Mets, is it not? Like it's every year you go in, it's like, oh, the Mets are a playoff team, they're World Series contender, right? Oh, look, Francisco Lindor. Then they go out there and they are so beyond mid, and it's just like I you gotta feel bad for the Mets fans, do you not? At this point, like
no.
I don't
Absolutely
really care. No,
sorry, but no,
we don't care. You're just like. And you know what's funny? Even though the Mets are not a winning ball club, I still hate them just as much as I would if they were winning. Like they're just such like the attitudes. It's I don't know what it is about the Mets that it just really like
just
turns me off every
rivalry.
time I watch them.
Yeah, and you brought up a point. Yeah. You brought up a point about hating them even though they suck. We ran a poll on the Philly fans Twitter recently. It's like, which team do you hate the most? It was the 4 teams in the NL East. The Braves won that poll somehow. We hate the Braves right now because they're really good. If the Braves were bad, we wouldn't think of them. The Mets are bad, and we still hate them.
Yeah, I would always consider the Mets as the deepest rivalry with the Phillies, but like
Definitely.
at this scenario, the Mets are too bad to even think of them as rivals.
We still do and you know what's funny? Like they don't even have like I look at their roster, and you would think. Like off the like just looking on paper, like okay, you signed JD Martinez. I know he's 100 years old. Like it doesn't matter. Like you think you'd have some pop in the lineup at least a little bit, right? Like man, Alvarez behind the plate, Pete Alonso. Like you'd think their team would be decent, and there's just never. I don't know what it is. They get a new manager, nothing seems to work for them ever. Yeah, and yet I still hate them.
And now Edwin Diaz is terrible too. It's just brutal.
I want to bring up because he just brought up the roster. I want to bring up one huge letdown, and that is Do you guys remember how big of a deal it was when Francisco Lindor hit free agency
Dude,
and he was signed by
Yeah.
the Mets? It was one of the biggest signings of the offseason,
huge
and there
contract.
hasn't been any noise from him. We haven't seen
I think
any like even chase for an award.
he's been good. It's just he hasn't been like he's been good, not great. Like he's been great, but he hasn't been like he's never been good enough to compete for an MVP. He's never been good
No.
enough to make those headlines, and it's just like he's one of the most expensive players in baseball, and it's just brutal because like he's great, he's not that great. You know what I mean?
He's a middle of the pack shortstop at this point to me. I mean, like very middle of the pack, if that, like lower. I mean, you know, you look around. Like let's just look at the NL East, right? So you have Arcia, who's better than I think currently Arcia is better than Lindor.
Right now, yeah.
Trey Turner better than probably both of those guys, right? I mean, the Marlins, whatever one of their AAA guys is playing shortstop for them, that's fine. And then
Anderson.
in DC, you got CJ Abrams, who's like
He's
killing
really
it.
good.
So I mean, just in our division, Lindor's not even close to the best shortstop. So yeah, I mean that's a big letdown on that roster. Always. Yeah.
Did you guys I didn't include this in the script, but did you guys hear about the interview between Chase Utley and an SNY reporter?
Yes.
Yes.
So Chase Utley was
Yes.
asked, has the Mets offered any invite for you to go? Have you thought about campaigning at City Field for the upcoming UK series game? And he goes, nope, haven't even received an invite.
Oh,
Yep.
He
It's
lives
so funny.
so rent free in the head of every Mets fan. It's
He
wild.
does.
we somehow got to get Chase to do some sort of local Philly broadcasting. Like I don't even know what he needs to do. They need to get him in the booth just
Yep.
to annoy the Mets fans. That would be
He would be so entertaining.
yeah.
He's
Oh
living
my
out in
God.
UK now, so
Is he really?
he's the
Oh,
baseball
wow.
ambassador for the United Kingdom.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
That's why they said he was going to go campaign at City Field.
I thought it was just the Phillies guy for that. That's crazy.
But moving on, Edwin Diaz, not putting up great stats, and he is really falling off. I mean, it's wild to see because I want to bring up one statistic that I found earlier today and it was pretty crazy to me, and that is Diaz had 3 blown saves in 2022. That was when he had that huge year that he was the best closer in baseball. He has had 3 blown saves already this season.
Jesus.
There you go. There you go, Edwin.
Attaboy.
Well, just to throw in with that with what I think of Diaz as a reliever. I mean, this is injury related to me. Like I will say, it's almost like he's having the Sir Anthony Dominguez effect, right? It's like Sir Anthony is like looks like he's throwing the ball properly. It's coming out of his hand, but it doesn't have the same finish and zip to it that it did in the past.
Yep.
I think Edwin's experiencing the same thing. Everything's hanging up, and people are just nailing it.
His pitch control has gotten a lot worse.
I think he's got a 5 ERA or something. It's like in the stratosphere for a closer. So, yeah, I think he's just struggling finishing his pitches. And I know that sounds kind of like a cliche answer, but I think he's struggling to finish, and then guys are just hitting jacks off him. And Stein hit one off him, right?
Yeah,
Stott hit one in the Monday game that sparked a comeback.
I don't know if y'all
controversial
saw
comeback.
this. Yeah. I don't know if y'all saw this. He was pitching against the Marlins. I think it was Josh Bell at bat. And Bell just hits an absolute tank off of him, ends up winning the game for the Marlins, and he points up at it like it's a fly ball into center field. I don't know if you guys have been seeing this. I've been loving it. It's so
I actually didn't watch that yet, but I feel like I just could see it in my head. Was it at Marlins Park or was it in?
I think it was in Miami, yeah.
In Miami, yeah. Which there too. Come on, man. Like that ain't gonna be a pop up in Miami. Like that park's like 500 feet to center field. Like the guy clearly hit a tank off you. Like yeah.
But
so funny.
I think we'll move on to our next point here, and I think we all know what the answer is going to be, but is there some concern with it? And that is, are the Phillies just good because they're playing bad teams? What everybody in
come
the
on, Dan.
MLB is trying to say. I'm not saying
this happens every time a Philadelphia sports team is good. So like the Eagles are good. Oh, they have a bad schedule. Oh, the Flyers are good. Oh, well, they just played bad teams and they're rebuilding. I don't want to hear it. The Phils are. I mean, and listen to the MLB at this current moment is a little lopsided, right? So you have so many powerhouses: Phils, Dodgers, Braves, right? And then in the American League, Yanks, Orioles. I mean, I feel like
we've seen that happen a lot with like Philly teams recently. Like the other conference is always so much better than the Phillies
The
team.
A conferences, what I've been noticing.
Yeah.
The A conferences in the West.
But like,
Yeah.
I don't want to. I'm not saying like the Phillies are a bad team. I'm on the side of they are a good team. They are playing good
Okay.
teams. Like these aren't bad teams. These are teams where you were just saying like, oh, they might be a playoff contender, and then they go off and say, oh, I mean, have you seen their schedule? It's pretty easy. Like,
Well, you break down the schedule just recently, right? Like, let's just go back to the San Diego series, right? Padres, I mean, that was before they got Arias. So now that they have Luis
Yeah.
Arias, it's a little bit different, I guess. But they're still a good ball team with Bogarts and Fernando and all those guys, right? So we swept them, right? Out of
Yeah.
Then you have the Angels who had Trout and then he got injured the next day, I think, after the first game. So I mean, whatever. But they have guys still, right? I mean, a lot of our young guys, Moniak and Ohapi and friends,
Yep.
but beat them in one of the in 2 games there. Then you play San Francisco, who, and I know we'll get into Jung Hoo Lee, right, and all that,
Mhm.
but another like talented roster. I don't think they're a terrible team. Like, I know they haven't been playing up to potential. I think they have a better roster than their record shows.
Definitely.
Beat the living heck out of them. Then you have Toronto come in. Should be a good team. Beat them up like Miami. So we're not playing bottom feeders. It's not like, we're playing. I mean, I know Oakland's been playing above their level, but we're not playing Oakland. We're not
Mhm.
playing, the Nats. The Nats are a decent team. I
They
don't care
are.
what anybody says. They're rebuilding. Abrams, Mackenzie Gore in their rotation. They're completely a decent team. I don't know. I hate this argument, Dan. This is a bad argument.
To build off the point you even said about the Padres, right now the Braves, they've lost 4 straight. 3 of those games right now to the Padres. The Padres have handled them, and I think they're back over 500 because of it.
yeah. So another thing you put is this Rangers series is going to be interesting, and I'm going to clarify because I have a question of what you mean by interesting.
I mean,
Ethan.
obviously, similar to the point Eddie just made about teams playing below their level, the Rangers are obviously the defending champions. They had that immaculate run last year, but they went on a massive losing skid very recently. So it went from a series where it's like, all right, this is going to be a dogfight to maybe this is going to be
Yeah, that was
an
that was what I was
easier
about.
series.
That's what I was about to bring up because I feel like you can make the argument. Yeah, like, of course we are a good team. Like, I'm just saying
Yeah.
that, but I don't think we can make the argument that the Rangers are the same World Series team that they were as they are right
Absolutely
now
not.
It's
because
early.
they
It's
took
early to say
they
that.
got swept by the Rockies. They went 1-2 against the Guardians and then 1-2 against the Angels. So I mean that's like their last 9 games, which
I
is
think
Okay,
it's
I
just
mean,
early to say.
I think the Guardians are another level currently right now.
yeah.
They're another
The
team that's
Guardians
like,
are doing
yeah,
good, but like
another level.
to
Yeah,
to get swept by the Rockies is
the
That's
Rockies.
crazy.
Yeah,
brutal.
That's
yeah,
crazy.
that's
Jesus,
brutal.
dude. That
Are
is
they? Who's the
rough.
worst record in the league now? I mean, I haven't looked at the updated standings. Is it the Rocks? Are they the worst team?
I believe it's still the Marlins, but it might be the Rockies.
Yeah,
Let me
it
check
might be the
right now.
15 and
Marlins.
31.
But while we're checking
Yeah,
that,
Marlins.
I want to bring up something about our schedule that I just realized. The Phillies team that we've known and loved for like 10 years has always had trouble beating lower level teams. They have never been able to beat
Yes.
lower level teams, and it was the
Playing
most annoying thing.
competition.
They would go out and destroy top of the standing teams and then go out and lose a series to like say the Oakland Athletics, and it was just
Yeah.
like it doesn't make sense. So I feel like you can make the argument that this team is way more overpowered than they've ever have been because they're beating bad teams.
And I think on the other thing is,
Yeah.
what do you want them to do? You know what I mean? Like, you can't hate on a team for beating bad teams. You good, Dan?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
But I was say you can't hate on a team for beating bad. Like, what do you want? Would you be happy if we were losing these series and we were 25 and 25? Like, just
They want to
either
pick apart our team. That's it.
it's brutal. It's just like, if you want to hate on the Phillies, like, I'm willing to have a conversation about it, but give me something that makes sense. Don't give me something that's just dumb.
There's not much to actually hate on at this point, right? And like, I heard a stat the other day. It was like the Phils haven't been to, what was it? Last year we didn't get our 30th win until June 2nd. Right? So put that into perspective. We're at 33, 34 wins now. 34.
Yeah.
34 wins and it's May 20th, right? So it's just sort of like putting that into perspective of what different level we're on than a lot of these teams. I will say though, on the argument too, just of like good team, bad team. I know coming out of the gate, those first couple of games was rough. That Atlanta series to open the year did tell me something. If I had to play like devil's advocate, like that was semi concerning to me. That was the only thing that was kind of like.
Yeah, that was also
I mean, you still
very
give
early
it.
in the year, though. Like, the
I
team's
I
very different.
I think I can make the argument that it's weather. The weather was terrible in those first
It
few games of the
was.
season, and I think you can make the
Yeah,
argument that
yeah,
the Phillies don't play well in the cold. But
yeah.
Yeah,
Aaron Nola doesn't pitch well in the cold either. We know
he
that.
does not.
definitely.
No, no.
It's brutal.
So I wanted to address another thing that is, I said last episode that I would be willing to add Cody Clemens into a deal that reaches Mason Miller. I want to take that back completely.
Thank you.
Cody Clemens is next generation. This kid is insane. He's like untouchable currently. But
Definitely.
I want to bring up an idea that might spark some, and I'm just throwing another offer out there.
Mm.
Get rid of Nick
Yeah.
Castellanos, send Bryce Harper back to right field, and have Cody Clemens take a starting position at first base if he earns a starting position. If he can
No.
earn a spot.
Mm,
Because here's those utility guys, man. They're so bounce like off and on, right? Like, it's all depending on. It's gonna be interesting when Trey Turner comes back, right? You're gonna have to see what's gonna happen there. And to me, I think they're gonna probably have to. They're gonna make a tough choice between Clemens and Pache, and I think Pache will probably get back down. I don't know. Like, I can't see who's gonna go here. Sosa's on a tear, right? I mean, I know they have so much faith in Rojas for some reason, even though he, in my opinion, stinks, right? Too much faith in Rojas. Yeah, that's my. I'll get in my Rojas take at some point. But so I think Pache is the odd man out there. And in terms of Castellanos trade, if you're bringing this up, then I've had this in my mind for a while. The only way you get rid of Castellanos is if you're packaging him for Trout. And that's like the only way it happens to me. It's
not
like,
that I can.
I
So
mean,
you're not in the trade Castellanos boat?
I'm not in the trade him just to trade him, right? Like, I don't think Bryce is ever going to go back to right field. I think he's so comfortable at first base and he's become an everyday first baseman that I think it's going back to right field would be like, I don't even know. It would be like a former catcher, like Buster Posey, for example. Remember when Buster Posey was playing all that first base back in the day? It'd be like him saying, "Oh, Buster, hey, go back and catch with your crap knees." Do you know what I mean? So I almost think that's the tricky thing with it. And with Casty too, I have too much faith in him too. Like, I feel like he's just going to heat it up. And then Cody Clemens though, great bench player overall. That's
Yeah, I just think one of the main issues is just Cody Clemens isn't he's just a true first baseman, and that's one of the issues with him rising up in the ranks is just he can't be utilized anywhere else in the diamond. I mean, I feel like they should have been working with that in the farm system and trying to like get him at least a secondary position, but he's just a true first baseman. That's going to be an issue down the line.
To be honest, if we're talking about trading Castellanos, which obviously isn't a guarantee, but if we're talking about trading Castellanos, I'd rather, supposing, like, let's say Rob Thompson's made up his mind, he's going to trade Castellanos. I'd rather find his replacement in that trade than shift around all these positions mid-season, and we'll just figure out what we're going to do with Cody Clemens and with the outfield and just positions that we'll figure that out in the offseason. Let Cody Clemens be a bench bat in the playoffs because he's going to do well there, hope we'd assume. I'd just rather figure that out later and just stick with what's working for now.
That's right. So okay. We're nearing the end of the podcast, and I have two big surprise questions for you guys that I didn't write. I might have written them down later, and you guys might have seen them. But yes, I wrote them down later. What is your favorite Phillies uniform of all time?
Ooh.
It's a tough question. I already know mine. Some might say it's simple, but it's the pinstripes.
Yeah. That's an easy. I mean,
pinstripes is. I don't want to say pinstripes. That seems too easy.
Actually, you know what? I think it could teeter totter for me. Like, I feel like it could, any day of the week, on a good day or a bad day, it could be either the blue alternates, powder blues,
the powders.
powder blues.
The powder blues are great currently, and they're very popular. For me, there was a uniform back in 2015, it was around we were really garbage. And it was this throwback to the Robin Roberts era, like it was the pinstripes, but it was like a more older looking one, and it had no names on the back. It was just numbers. That's the one you're going to have to look up. I don't know what I don't know what it's called. I have to like search it now.
It's
But
gonna be like
it
2015 era or
is,
something. But
yeah, it was a throwback. It was sweet.
remember, and like I don't think like I'd still like it to this day. I think it was pretty garbage. Like now that I think back at it, but when I was younger, I always wanted a batting practice jersey. I don't know if you guys remember the older red batting practice
Yes.
jerseys that they
Mhm.
would wear. I always wanted one of those, but like now I look back and I'm like, man, I'm glad we never wore those for a game.
So I don't know if anybody can see these, but this is the uniform I'm referring to. It's the red pinstripes, but
Oh,
it's an older vibe. It's like just all red,
I
and
like how
it's
they put
older.
the
the
MLB
MLB
logo on the
logo,
sleeve.
yeah.
Yes, I think that's just like so classy. I love that uniform. It was the uniform they wore. This is a real throwback. You guys might be too young for this, you children, but when the
Damn.
squirrel climbed up onto the netting in that one game, there was a
I
Cardinals
remember
game.
seeing that. Yeah, I remember seeing that.
Yes,
Seen
so
that.
they were wearing those uniforms that night. But that was probably my favorite uniform. Was that one?
That's fair. It's gonna lead us into our next question though. Favorite Phillies player of all time?
Oh,
Oh, this is gonna sound like such recency bias because we've all been watching them, so this is gonna sound like such recency bias.
I have one
Oof.
historic and then one that's like current, of course.
okay.
But
It's
I'd
tough.
say I'd say I give the recent to. I don't know if everybody's
There's
gonna like
also
this one.
like there's also like the players that like people talk about players that like made you like the sport. You know what I mean? That kind of holds a special place in people's hearts.
Yes.
Oh, my recent one is that, and that is Reese Hoskins.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, Reese.
Yep. He's one of
Reese
the guys
Hoskins
like,
was the man who got me into baseball.
yep. Obviously I was a lot younger back then just watching. Who's like the one guy you would kind of, at least in the lineup, the one guy you kind of like watch for. He was the guy who's gonna be the future of the
He
team.
was the
Obviously
only
just
guy
not
who was
it.
good on that team.
The
Those days
only person.
when we were barely hitting like 60 wins.
There's lineups that people will post every now and then. It's like, hey, we used to have it worse. Like
When you had
Odubel
Carlos
Herrera.
Santana and
Yeah.
Double
yeah,
Herrera,
Yeah.
Michael
Odubel.
Franco,
My
who
brother
was a
got one of
beast, by the
those.
way.
My brother got one of those. The Freddie Galvis. My brother got one of those Odubel Herrera hats that they gave out at a game once. I don't know if he still has it.
Even some of these 2021 teams now that you said like the recent couple years with some of the players that were on it that you just forget were Phillies, like Matt Joyce. Like like Matt Joyce was a Philly. Like there's just so many guys that were like just random dudes.
Jose
Grady
Bautista.
Sizemore, Bautista, yeah. Yeah.
Jesus.
Wilson Ramos. I mean, there's just like a bunch of them. Yeah.
I think like
But
just the mentality back then was just like, hey guys, we sign a legend who's like nearing
80.
geriatric.
yeah.
He's gonna turn the team around.
We'll wheel him out to first base.
Well, we'll Joey Bats. Yeah, to answer your question though, like about favorite fills of all time. Like I've been thinking about this one actually recently. Like for me as a kid, this is just personal, right? Like Carlos Ruiz was always my favorite as a catcher because I just would always watch him and like even during his like steroid PED era where he had like 50 million hits, he was still just always entertaining to watch and was like a great backstop for Doc Holliday and then current fills. And I said this forever. I mean, right now Alec Boehm is so fun to watch, and I've
Yes.
been on the Alec Boehm love train since he was called up. And everybody be like, oh well, he's too lanky and he's not athletic enough or whatever. He's awesome. Like people would say that to me all the time, and now seeing him thrive and hit at a like
Yep.
over 300 clip is awesome.
I think we do got to throw some love at the guys from the '08 championship team. You got to throw some love at like Ryan Howard, Shane Victorino,
That's what I was
Jimmy
gonna say
Rollins was
for
the guy I loved growing up.
that's what I was gonna say for my historic. My historic player was just like, especially like watching my brothers watch, having my brothers watch baseball growing up, and like seeing my family like watch the '08, not '08 team, but like the latter halves of it. Chase Utley was definitely the guy who I kind of like
Mm-hmm.
s- sparked me into liking baseball. So I'd have to say that's my historical favorite player. Ethan, how about you?
Historical favorite player from those teams back then was always obsessed with. I don't know what it was, but always obsessed with Jimmy Rollins. It was just he was definitely my not even close. He was the favorite guy on the team. It was just so fun to watch him play here and there. I was obviously really young. I just remember being obsessed with Jimmy Rollins.
All right.
You know
And
what's great too? Before you go on, Dan, too, the vibes at the ballpark lately have been that of
They
2000.
sellouts,
have.
sellouts.
Like the sellouts for a Washington
Amazing.
Nationals game in May.
Yeah.
I'm like, the Nats are in town. Who you going to go watch there? Jesse Winker. But like, it's been so fun to watch. It's been awesome. Yeah.
It's electric. And
Keep going down to the bank, man. It's
Yep.
awesome.
Keep it going.
Great
Just can't
vibes
wait for
there.
playoff vibes.
All right. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode as we near the 25-minute mark. Gotta say it's been great, Eddie. How about you tell us where we can find all of your awesome music in the Grieving Hour album?
Yeah, if you want to check out Grieving Hour, my new record, you can go search on any streaming service, Grieving Hour Eddie, and you'll find me up there. Or you can follow me on Instagram at Eddie.Tamanini, and then you can check out my link tree and all my shows. Come see a show. It's a great time. It's gonna be a fun summer.
It's great.
It's gonna be crazy. Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Check us out. As always, I'm Danny McDevitt. You can follow me at dmcdevitt25. You can follow Ethan at Ethan_W6. You can check out the Philly Fans podcast on TikTok and X. You can check it out on TikTok and X. Anyways, one final time. See you later. Go Phils.
As cliche as that sounds, and I'm just waking up to you every day to go to the Strawberry Cafe.